This series is thanks in large part to Dr. Margaret Mabindio, my colleague who does most of the arranging and finding of the wonderful speakers that we've had. And anything that you see, any kind of announcements you see are all thanks to Margaret's work, and we're grateful to her for that. Our series this spring does have four different speakers, and I just want to point out that the next session is on February 18th at 12 p.m. Rain Sperling, Dr. Rain Sperling, who's Associate Dean, Undergraduate and Graduate Studies and Professor of Education at Penn State University. And Dr. Sperling will be talking about metacognition, self-regulated learning, and memory strategies. If you have not seen the flyer for this series yet, and we have four that are coming this spring for different talks, then it will be in Mville Daily, and you can sign up there. So keep your eyes on that. Without further ado, we're so pleased to have Adina Glickman today with us, who needs no introduction because she is truly a superstar in this area, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her background and introduce herself. So Adina, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you, Margaret, for inviting me to be here. I see all of your names, and I'm not sure what Millersville, what you're used to in terms of showing up, showing your faces versus showing your names. I invite you to show your faces. I have a much better time. I'm a much better speaker when I'm seeing people's beautiful faces. And I can also tell then if you're laughing at my jokes or not. So I invite you to show up, no matter how you look. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you. And I'm going to actually at first share my screen, so I won't see you for a little while, but I'll be back. We'll be back for questions towards the end. So I'm going to share my screen, and away we go. So today's talk is Failing to Excel, Lessons We Can Learn from Failure. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I come to this work. So that's me with my fantastic fashion sense very early on. It was all good until I was in school, where I was, because of my fashion sense, quite the outcast. But I'll zoom forward to my high school years. I took the SATs. I didn't break 1,000 on my SATs. In the spirit of failing to excel, I thought rather than I tell you all about my successes and all the wonderful things that I've done in my life that my mother would be so proud of, all the things that have sucked and have not gone well and that have constituted real or perceived failures. One of them was my bomb of the SATs, which may or may not have to do with or have generated the fact that I applied to 5 colleges and was rejected from, not all of them, almost, I was applied to 6 and was rejected from 5 colleges. I did end up going to college though, to the one that did accept me, and I hated it, and I transferred to a different college. I did eventually graduate. I went to graduate school in social work. I was fired from my first job, not because I was doing a bad job, but because they ran out of money. But nevertheless, it really hurts to be fired, even if you know it's because of the money. So I was fired. I've also, back to the rejections, I've had books that I've tried to get published and they've been rejected. So many rejections, many setbacks, many promotions denied in my life. I've also made my share of burnt toast and ruined meals. And I have a son and a stepson. They are both grown and semi-launched. I've made plenty of parenting and step-parenting mistakes. So I come to you fully flawed. You might hear all of this and think, what a hot mess. How is she able to sit in front of us and actually talk to us? Well, I'm not a hot mess because I really try and learn from all of these terrible, horrible things that have happened to me. So along the way, I was at Stanford. I was hired at Stanford to start their academic skills coaching program. And in the process of that, I started something called the Resilience Project, which we have this beautiful icon and it's very fancy and it looks like it's a great success. It was a great success and it spawned kind of an international movement of resilience programming. But Stanford never supported it. And in fact, when I retired from Stanford about a year and a half ago, they let the project go. I was its only champion, and so they let the project go. But I parlayed that experience, that failure, into something that I now co-direct, which is something called the Academic Resilience Consortium, which is now a 600 member strong organization of higher ed folks who are all interested in helping promote resilience on campus. Um, since retiring, I started my own business. I created something called Affinity Coaching, and I now provide coaching to high school students, college students, parents, young professionals, and I'm still having my setbacks as I go, but I'm learning as I go and moving forward. So that's me professionally. But the thing that I wanted to share with you today, um, I've created sort of a model, a holistic model of understanding student learning, which I call the resilient learner, which is eight pillars of success. And I'm going to kind of breeze through them because y'all are probably sick of watching people talk. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time teaching. I just want to give you a sense of what I'm about. And we're going to talk specifically about a few things today based on the responses that we got from the survey that Margaret sent out last week. But the 8 pillars are briefly use of autonomous skills outside the classroom, like self-teaching and managing time. Students use autonomous skills within the classroom. Right now, those are sort of the same thing, but there's class participation like listening and taking notes, and then there's stuff that you do independently. We talk about growth mindset, which is the idea that intelligence is not fixed. It's a muscle that can be grown like any other muscle in your body. I talk about specifically academic resilience, how we respond to failure. Resilient learning relies on a sense of belonging, feeling connected to your community. And for those of you who are first years, it's really difficult to feel like that because the college experience is so splintered right now because of the pandemic. But I did read that actually a lot of you felt like Millersville is doing a fantastic job at keeping you connected to each other. So that's really great to hear. It's important to have a meaningful relationship with technology. And that also is very strained right now because it's almost like every relationship you have is through technology. So it's especially important that you make some choices and have some understanding about what that should mean to you. It's important to understand something about your own educational institution, what the policies, what the norms are. And finally, there's really everything that's just part of you. Your emotional, your interpersonal, your spiritual, your nutritional, your financial, environmental health. So resilient learning is really about all of you. But the things that I'm going to focus on today are a couple of autonomous skills outside of the classroom, specifically about dealing with procrastination and motivation, and the concept of academic resilience, which is really how we respond to failure. So I'm going to just check in for a moment here and ask my co-hosts if the sound is okay, if I'm talking too fast, and just get a little bit of feedback. So I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay. I have a bit of a croaky voice. One of my more personal challenges is that I have one paralyzed vocal cord. That I got a virus about 25 years ago and it knocked out both my vocal cords and only one of them came back. So I have to work hard to make my voice heard. So so let's talk about what is failure. And the way I see it, there's only really one kind of failure in school, which is an F. Um, even a D, it sucks, but you get credit. So failure is actually, in my eyes, a very narrow set of things. There are things, though, that feel like failure, but aren't necessarily failure. And most often they make us pretty bummed out, like puppy year. So the things that feel like failure, but aren't necessarily failure, is when you're an A student and you're used to getting A's and you get a B. That feels like a failure. And I'm not trying to delegitimize it. That B is as painful as an F, because what feels like failure is failure. It's it's not necessarily how it's viewed by the world. It's how it feels to you inside. And since we're talking about how to respond to failure, it's important to know that what feels like failure is just as important as what actually failure is. So a B can feel like failure. Being stuck can feel like failure. If you're used to some things coming pretty naturally, and all of a sudden you can't get it. It feels like you've reached the end of your road and you've failed to be the smart person you know yourself to be. That can feel like failure. Being rejected can feel like failure, although it isn't necessarily, but it can certainly feel like, I'm a failure, I'm no good. Humiliation, regret, all the things that make you do a face plant, those are all things that feel like failure. They're not necessarily failure, but they feel like it. And also, it's important to remember that failure doesn't always just make us sad. It can completely freak us out and derail us and make us feel like we don't know what to do next. It can also sometimes make us really angry. Mostly what I've found in my travels is that it makes people feel ashamed. And that's that's a very difficult thing to deal with, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So so failure and setbacks and rejection are many things, but I want to focus on how I see them. They are normal parts of life. You know, we know that when we learned how to walk, like this sweetheart over here, we did not do it right the first time. We fell all the time. Um, but the more you learn, the more they fall down, the more your legs grow stronger. Your inner ear figures out how to balance. Um, you don't do it right the first time, and that's the nature of growing, is that we just don't do it right the first time. And usually those setbacks, those failures feel bad. But we know, and even elephants don't know how to walk in the puddles. But every time they fall down, they get back up and they do it differently. So the important thing, I think, is when you have a failure or a setback, you need to give yourself time to feel bad. It doesn't feel good. You have to give yourself a chance to feel whatever it is you feel: angry, ashamed, freaked out, whatever that bad feeling may be. And there has to be work done before you can move on. One of the best examples I can think of in responding to failure is Stacey Abrams, who many of you know. She was very involved in the election. She lost the bid for governor in Georgia, and she essentially responded to that failure by making it irrelevant. And she became a powerful voice in the 2020 election. And she's better known, more popular, more powerful in the role that she has now than she would have had as governor. So, and she actually has a really nice TED talk. I'm not going to play it for you here, but I really recommend that you take a look at that, because she's talking exactly to what we're talking about. How can your response to a setback influence your future? How do you move forward from failure? So I like to say, one door closes, another one opens. But you know what? The hallway's a bitch. We can have as much faith as we want that it's going to happen, but getting there is really, really hard. So let's talk about how to get there, how to make that change moving forward. It's important to reflect. And these are some of the questions that I encourage you to ask yourself when you have a failure. What was my part? How did I participate? Did I show up in the way that I know I wanted to show up? I had a student once uh, who kept getting rejected from a TA-ship at Stanford. And all of her friends were getting this same exact TA-ship, and she thought that she should get it too. Finally, after the 5th time that she applied and was rejected, she realized she had absolutely no interest in it. It was because her friends were doing it. And thank goodness she was rejected, because she would have hated it. So she had to take a look at what was she really doing in applying for this when she really was doing it for the wrong reasons. Another question to ask yourself is, what did I have no control over? Interestingly enough, when I do workshops with high school students, they all think that they're in a lot more control than they are. They all think it's their fault. There's a lot that's not your fault. So it's important, when I talk about understanding the institution, understand which are the policies that I just can't fight. What are the norms that would take a lot of work for me to try and sift through? What is mine and what is not mine? Another question is, what would I do differently if I look back and say, how did that go? What was my part? What was beyond? What might I have done differently? And most important, what can I learn from it? Those are the things that help us move forward. Another thing to ask yourself is, what do the people who love and believe in me say? And how might future, wiser, more experienced me understand what's happening? Which means to really think about, who am I and how do I want to think about this in the future? Do I want to say, this is the thing that ended me? Or do I want to say, this is the thing that propelled me into a different way of doing things? In other words, get some perspective. The thing that I want to focus on is, what can I learn? And I'm just, these are all the ways that you can, these 8 pillars, you can take a look at, where might I need some growth in one of these areas. But the thing that I heard loud and clear from the survey was the 2 things that are most troublesome are procrastination and motivation. When you look at a pile of homework or a massive amount of reading, it's very difficult, or a lecture that is boring, very difficult to stay awake for that. So one of the ways that I try and help students with motivation is just, my favorite thing in the world is donuts. I want as much of what I do in life to feel like donuts. And this is Oprah, loving my donuts. So I think about the pain points that we face. And those pain points in school are lectures. In the best of times, a live lecture is not always a great way to receive and engage with information. Massive amounts of reading can really overwhelm and intimidate. Things that make us feel incompetent. When you have a difficult problem or a complicated research paper to write, the pain point is that starting to do this work makes us feel stupid. And who wants to go there? Things that don't feel at all connected to what matters to us are really difficult to get going on. Especially if you're taking classes that are not like things that are interesting to you, but maybe they're interesting to your parents, or maybe someone in your life says, that's a good thing to do, you should do that. But you haven't figured out what the connection is. That's a pain point. So a fix for procrastination, and procrastination is so related to motivation, is to build in rewards. What can you do to treat yourself well when you have sustained your attention in a lecture that was otherwise boring? What can you give yourself? What's the reward? Another way to handle the things that prompt procrastination are to break down the tasks. For example, if you have a massive amount of reading, it's helpful to say, well, I'm going to do 5 pages now, and I'm going to do 5 pages after lunch, and then I'm going to do another 5 pages later, and not take it all at once. Similarly, when you have writing projects or any kind of work, to say, okay, what's the total of it, and what's the piece that I can do now? A really, really important thing about work that makes us feel incompetent is to remember that the feeling of incompetence is sort of like the feeling of when you're lifting weights and you feel the burn. When we lift weights, what's actually happening is when you are trying to build muscle, you break down tissue, and that signals to your body to produce more muscle, and it hurts. And if you are trying to gradually build up muscle, you are supposed to continually feel a little bit burned. When we're building muscle intellectually, when you're a student building school muscle, the burn is frustration. The burn is, I feel so stupid. Why can't I do this? Why is this coming naturally? Start to connect that burn, that feeling with, oh, this means I'm growing my brain. This means I've reached the edge of how much weight I can easily lift. When it feels frustrating, when I feel stuck, that's when it's working. And welcome that feeling rather than run away from it or say, I must be doing it wrong. Finally, it's so important that you try and connect whatever it is you're learning to the donuts in your life. I had a student once who was taking a statistics course, and she was a voice major. And almost all of the statistics models that were being used were psychology and economics modeling. And she wasn't into psychology, and she wasn't into econ. And so what we did was we talked about, well, how would you understand, if you did an experiment where you had 10 singers and they all had a certain vocal range, and then they all doubled the number of lessons that they took, how would their vocal range change if they increased the number of lessons? And all of a sudden she understood that the way to think about statistics could be relevant to something that mattered to her. So you can't turn all of your classes into donuts, but you can try and find the degrees of separation between what matters to you, what really turns you on and fascinates you, to the thing that you're learning. And it takes some work. It doesn't necessarily come easily, but you are in charge of finding the connections with the things that you're doing to the things that matter to you. So that is the end of my slideshow. I will find my mouse. Stop my share. Oh, you're all still here. I'm so glad. Thank you for being here. I've said many things, and I really want to invite your questions or your comments or your disagreements. So Margaret is going to unmute you if you raise your hand, and you get to talk to me and to each other. So now is when we have the awkward teaching silence where everybody thinks, I'll let somebody else go first. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until 3 people have raised their hand. If you want to raise your hand down at the bottom of your screen, and reactions. Emily has her hand raised, and Madison, I'm going to wait for one more person, and then I'm going to start to call on people. This gives everybody a chance to get warmed up. One more person. I know you're out there. Don't leave Emily and Madison. Ah, thank you, Siani. Okay. Margaret, can you go ahead and unmute Emily? Or maybe I can. Oh, there. Emily, hi.
Hi, thank you for this.
Thank you.
So I'm a senior finance major. I've been here for a while. I've been here since 2015 because I go part-time and I work. And it's hard to prioritize a lot. Like that school's so important because it's been kind of a drag for me because I pay out of pocket. It's hard to motivate myself because that's where I see all my money go. But the biggest part for me is it's of course like motivation, procrastination, but I don't really get I don't get these feelings of like accomplishment when I do the task that I need. And sometimes it takes me a lot longer too. But like I don't know what exactly is the cause, if that's more like of a mental thing or not. But you know, I try to like every time I try to like finish something, if I dread on it for an hour, I do it finally. It takes 15 minutes. I feel great. But that's a really fleeting feeling. And I think if I could like motivate myself to feel so accomplished, like currently I have an incomplete. That's one of the last things I have to finish. And then I'm done my degree. And I just can't, for the life of me, get that finished. It's not because I'm scared to be done. It's just because it's such a drag. Like I just don't feel great when I finish it. But I know once it's done, it will be a huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah. No, I thank you. That's a great.
Yeah, that's just a big problem I have.
Yeah. That's a great thing to bring up. And for a senior, that's different from a first year. And I hear a little bit more in what you're talking about as burnout.
Yeah.
And when I talk with students who have burnout, we're talking about breaking tasks down into micro steps. Mm-hmm. So if you take that incomplete and you think, what's the first step to finishing that incomplete? So what's the first step to finishing that incomplete?
Probably it's a big research paper, probably an outline,
an outline.
Yeah, probably the sources.
That's a big step. What's a micro step?
Probably the sources before I even read the articles. Like
that's a huge step. What's a micro step?
I don't know what a micro step would be. I guess the title. Like I'm not sure.
Maybe the micro step is open up the document and just let it be in an open window on your computer.
Okay. That's something I can do.
That's something you can do. Okay. So what a micro step does is it says, okay, it lowers the threshold and becomes doable. Everything that you do is micro steps. Everything. And if you can identify the next micro step and do it, you know, if you imagine you're standing here and you have, this is your incomplete, right? And it's a stack of steps. Well, let's take that first step and put it down here. You can climb up onto that step. Then let's take the next step and put that down. You can climb onto that step. Nobody climbs the mountain by looking at the top of the mountain. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're saying, I have this big, huge research paper. Wow, I'm never going to get there. But it's not a research paper. It's opening a document. Mm-hmm. It's reading the prompt. It's visiting with some of the resources. And if you can do micro steps, you begin to build a little bit of momentum. Okay. I would also suggest that you say, what is this research about and why do I even care about it? Mm-hmm. And it may be something that you used to care about, but it's likely that it's something that can still matter to you. And the feeling of accomplishment isn't just, Okay, that's done. It's, wow, I brought some energy to this and it gave me some energy back. And that comes usually from your own excitement about getting to say something. I mean, a research paper isn't just, I'm going to, restate what everybody else said. It's, I'm going to show the world a different way to think about all this stuff that I'm researching.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two suggestions I have. One is reclaim some energy and some interest and connection to the topic of this paper. And the other is to identify and really be rigorous about this. Micro steps, not, I mean, your steps are important and they're going to happen. But if they're not happening, it's because they're too big.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for speaking up. Okay, Madison. Hi. Mark.
Sorry.
Hi.
Sorry, I need to clear my throat.
That's okay.
I think I'm starting to be able to break things down. That's getting easier for me. But my problem is I take forever when I take notes while I'm reading.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if I even know an efficient way to take notes because it's taking me a lot longer than I ever remembered it to.
Okay. So that's a great topic, and it can feel really exhausting to take a lot of notes. So you should leave your mic on because I'm going to ask you questions. When you are taking notes, are you sort of transcribing what you're reading? Like, do you end up kind of writing down everything that you're reading?
I'm trying to like paraphrase it and only write down definitions, but I tend to have to reread like a lot. Like I'll have to read a paragraph over again to like fully understand it.
Mm-hmm. When you're reading, how much of your attention is on focusing on the reading versus how am I going to turn this into a note?
That sounds pretty accurate.
The second one, I'm going to turn this into a note. Okay. So one suggestion that I have is to change the way that you think about notes. Think about when you were in high school or when you were in elementary school, and somebody in your house would say, "What'd you learn in school today?" I hope they said that.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
And I'd be like, "Mom, I tell you this every day."
So imagine that you read a paragraph, and your job is that when someone knocks on your door and says, "What was that paragraph about?" you can tell them. So rather than look at the paragraph as the purpose of the paragraph is to take a note, think of the paragraph as, what am I getting from this? What is it telling me? So that I can tell it to my mom. And read a paragraph and then take a note. Or read a page or a few paragraphs and then take a note. So that your notes are more kind of a discourse. You read something, you think about it, you write down something that reminds you, what did that teach me? So your purpose, I mean, the best notes really, I think, are the ones that reflect your thinking. You can always go back to the source and reread it, but you can't necessarily capture how you made sense of it. Mm-hmm. So you want to capture, I mean, a note is, "Dear Madison, don't forget to shut the lights when you leave." Mm-hmm. Right? A note from a text is, "Dear Madison, this is what you thought of this. This is how you understood this." Brief and specific to you.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to not, like, I should really start explaining what I'm reading in my own words instead of trying to get like the technical thing down. I think it'll help me more, but also get definitions too still, but yeah.
You know, taking down definitions and being able to sort of consolidate the work so that you can refer to it, that's kind of a different thing from taking notes, and that can be a separate discrete task. But the notes that you take should be a breadcrumb trail back to how you were thinking and making connections in the reading. One other thing I can suggest is that before you sit down to read, I can't remember who the philosopher was, but I remember he said, before I sit down to learn anything new, I think about it for 2 hours. You don't have that kind of leisure, I don't think. But before you start reading something, if you can kind of warm up your brain and say, what do I know about this? I'm not a blank slate. I don't come to this with no knowledge. What did we talk about in class? What was the lecture about? What was the last reading about? And kind of orient yourself and say, what do I think is coming next? Then what you're reading will make a little bit more sense to you. And you won't necessarily have to go back over things that you've already read because you've reoriented yourself and you've connected the current learning to the past learning.
Mm-hmm.
So try those things.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see some things in chat, but I haven't been checking chat. So Margaret, if there's anything, are there questions in there?
Yes. There are 2 questions to you, Adina.
Oh, okay. Well, let me open chat then. I don't read university email for some reason, and I miss out on important stuff. For example, I did not see the email, that pass-fail option. Can the university use another method? This is a significant generational challenge. So let me just give you a background on email. So me, when I was in college, we didn't have email. We wrote people notes on paper. They were called memorandums. And when you got a memorandum, you read it and you either threw it away because it was ridiculous and didn't matter, or you did something with it, or you put it in a, I'm going to deal with this next week file, but you handled paper. And when email came along, paper became messages. And right now, the people who, you folks who are in college, didn't start with pieces of paper moving around. You started with Twitter and email and text and very short pieces of things that are fleeting and disappear from your screen. So you're not, your history doesn't really support the idea of email. Email feels clunky and it feels like a chore. So I think until you guys are college administrators, email is going to be with us. And by the time you get to where you are in charge and decide we're going to have a different way of communicating, email is going to be with us. So what I can suggest is to you know, let's say you have a history class and you have a science class and you have an econ class, you have a personal administration class, and you meet with that personal administration class every day for a half an hour. And you put into your calendar, this is when my class meets. And that is the time that you check your email, or you look to see if you have bills to pay, or you listen to your voicemail, or you go through the million texts that you haven't responded to. But that is your personal administration time. And I would just build that in because email's not going away. So if I didn't get it, raise your hand and we'll talk more. But I will go on. There's another question. I need lots of motivation to progress during COVID, it's been hard to stay motivated. Motivation strategy during the pandemic. Thank you so much for bringing this up specifically. Motivation during the pandemic. You know, I'm 58, and so the pandemic is only one small piece of my life, and I know that I have a long life ahead of me because I've had a long life behind me. Part of what's difficult about motivation for you all right now is that this is a big part of your lives, and you haven't had a hugely long life to say, oh, there's going to be plenty more. So it's really hard to say, what is the point of all of this? It's so important to find purpose in what you're doing in a very intimate, personal way right now, because you don't have the social chatter, you don't have the reinforcement and the energy of being around people all the time. So motivation strategy during the pandemic is, what are the good things that I'm doing for myself? What am I getting from this? And how can it feel satisfying to me in a very small way? I'm going to have faith that there's a bigger thing going on, that there's going to be a long life in front of me, that all this is going to pay off, that I have a future to go to. But right now, try and put some blinders on and say, what has to matter right now is this moment. And sometimes that means, okay, well, all there is to appreciate right now is that my sheets feel soft. Okay, well, my sheets are soft and that's nice. Well, I'm going to take my sheets and I'm going to sit in front of my laptop with my soft sheets, and I'm going to try and get something done that I can only hope is going to matter in the long run. Motivation is got to come from inside. And right now, there's not a lot of energy coming to you. So you're depleted. So whatever you can do to find energy from the outside. You have to laugh more. You have to drink more water. I guess there's no secret magic bullet. There's no secret trick to it. I guess maybe just helping you all understand that you're not alone, and it's hard to stay motivated. And I'm not just talking about college students. It's hard for teachers to stay motivated. It's hard for parents to stay motivated. It's hard for everyone to stay motivated right now because the future is so uncertain. But I promise you, it's going to get better. I absolutely promise you it's going to get better. It's not going to be like this forever. Question, how do you stay academically resilient when you have so much issues going on? Lack of money to buy food or study materials. I have so many problems, but I know I want to do well to make it in life. Please help. Thank you for putting that forward. Whoever you are, I don't know who that is. Well, you have at least a couple of beautiful people here from the university, and if you can connect with them, I don't know if they have help to offer around food and study materials, but I have a feeling that they have more specific to offer than I do about that. I guess I kind of want to take it offline and talk with you and see how we can kind of troubleshoot the specifics of what you're struggling with right now. Because not having money is huge. And I don't know, Margaret, is there a way to connect with students after this? Okay.
Yes, I can try to see how to connect with them.
Okay. Please sorry?
Especially that particular student.
Yeah. Please don't disappear. Thank you for asking the question. And let's see what we can do to troubleshoot the specifics. Next question. I have a hard time finding my passion. I don't know how to work on it. Please, could you give me some advice? Finding your passion. You know, one of the greatest questions that I ever heard an advisor ask a student at Stanford was, and we're recording, so this is forever. What's fucked up about the world that you want to fix? You know, what is wrong with the way the boomers are doing things, the way I'm doing things, that you want to do better? And what matters to you? And what are your donuts, essentially? What lights you up? And I have a suspicion that you haven't had a lot of time to really ponder that. You know, one of the things that I notice about young people is you don't have time to daydream. You don't have time to let your brain wander and just find its own way. There's a lot of stuff filling you up. Finding your passion can come from that. It can come from the empty spaces that you give yourself a chance to look at. So one suggestion would be turn everything off for an hour a day and just sit quietly and see where your mind travels to. It may travel to worries. It may travel to your own problems that you're trying to solve, like getting enough food or money to buy food. So maybe the problem that you're facing is people should not have to worry about food in college. That's just wrong, and I want to fix that. And I'm in college, and I want to do something about that. So that matters to me. Often the passions are very, very personal. You know, I think a lot of people who are, end up in social work or psychology, as I did, we want to fix us. And in so doing, we want to fix the rest of the world too. So find what matters to you. Find what bugs you. God, I hate that I hate that this is how it has to be. I want to run a school. I want school to be different for people. Or, I have cousins in Michigan and their water is poisoned. That's not okay with me. I want to fix it so that water isn't poisoned for people. Whatever it is that matters to you. Okay, I'm going to move on. There's a lot of questions. My problem is that I stress myself out before I even start an assignment. I look at the assignment and just keep overthinking how much work will be involved and stress myself. You're looking at the top of the mountain. Look at your feet. Don't look at the whole assignment. Just look at what's that first micro step. I had a student once who had been putting off a math assignment for days. Like I think she had like 10 days to do it, and it was due the day that she came to see me. And I said, well, do you have the assignment with you here in my office? And she said, yeah, I've got it in my backpack. And I said, well, take it out. Let's see it. Maybe we can figure it out right here. I don't know. I love math. I don't know if I'm going to be able to help you, but let's see. She took it out of her backpack and she looked at it and she said, oh my God, I can do this. She had not even looked at it. And she realized upon looking at it that she could do it. But then she had very little time to do it. And that's what had stressed her out. So the thought that she wouldn't be able to do it had delayed her 10 days. So don't assume that you can't do it. Start with just look at it. And if you want to maybe get a couple of pals to look at it with you so that you're not alone, so they can talk you down from your panic, just start by looking at it. And remember, you're not doing all of the work. You're not going to climb the mountain in one leap. You're going to do it one step at a time. Micro steps. There's a suggestion about Millersville Share Meals Club offers an app that students can use to locate meals. More about food, campus cupboard, great suggestions. My problem has to do with stress, too stressed out before I do assignments. How do I become level-headed to compose myself well to do my assignments? That's a great question, actually. I'm not sure how much any of you know about mindfulness meditation. Sitting quietly and just doing a body scan and just noticing in your body what's holding that stress. Like literally doing an inventory starting at the very top of your head. Right now, I don't know if you can see my eyebrows are raised, so there's some tension in my forehead. Just sitting quietly, letting yourself breathe naturally, but noticing physically all the different parts of your body that may be holding that stress and manifesting that stress. And if you do that for like 3 minutes, just take 3 minutes to run through forehead, eyes, jaw, neck, shoulders, work all the way down. By the time you get to your toes, you will have reduced your stress. What happens is our bodies release cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and adrenaline when we are fearful and stressed out. And what that inventory does is intercept those automatic hormonal responses and give your body a chance to reabsorb that adrenaline, stop that flow of cortisol, help you think more clearly, and just kind of short circuit your central nervous system from thinking that, you know, there's a lion chasing you across the plains. It helps you de-stress. Just breathing and giving yourself a chance to sit. Deep breaths bring more oxygen to the brain, help you make better decisions. So if you can do some deep breathing with that, but most important, give yourself a couple of minutes a day to sit and do a body inventory. I am mentally unhealthy. My mind wanders during class and I have no meaningful concentration. It's tough. What can you tell me? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by mentally unhealthy. If you have a real clinical disorder, that's not the same as having your mind wander during class. You may feel mentally unhealthy, but it also may be that you're experiencing perfectly normal reactions to perfectly horrible situations. You know, it's not crazy to be bored when you sit and stare at a screen for hours on end. That's not a pathological response. One thing that I didn't mention before about dealing with lectures and in class boredom is sort of like the reading suggestion. Before you sit down to watch a lecture, think about what did we talk about last time? What did I just read about? What do I think is coming next? And create sort of a very rough outline of what you think the lecture is going to be about. And then listen for when those questions or those points get addressed. So you're actively tuning into something that you can then note, rather than just saying, okay, what's coming next? What's coming next? You're listening for something that can then strike you. And when you hear something that you were looking for, your brain releases dopamine and that will wake you up. We have about 5 minutes left and I know that people are starting to trail off and need to get to other things. So I'm actually going to stop now. I see you have more questions and I hope that, Margaret, you'll send me the questions and I'd like to respond. I can send you some emails or something, but thank you guys so much. You have been a lovely group of people to talk with and I wish I could be there.
Thank you so much, Adina. We really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, especially to our students. Those were very meaningful questions. And I really want to encourage all of you, please, to stay tuned for the upcoming sessions. All these speakers are very powerful. And every time you attend, you will get something from it. So thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye.